Welcome back to Hospitality Reinvented. I'm your host, Doug Radkey, the founder and principal consultant with KRG Hospitality, an agency that helps new and seasoned bar, restaurant, and boutique hotel operators turn confusion into clarity, pressure into performance, and guesswork into growth. Today, we are going to pull back the curtain on a part of hospitality that almost no one seems to talk about publicly: the often messy, complicated, stressful, and high-stakes world of project management for new concepts and brands. This is not the glamorous part of hospitality. This is not that Instagrammable, moment. This is everything that happens long before that first cocktail is even poured at the bar, long before that first room is even booked at your hotel, and long before that first guest ever forms an opinion of your brand. What happens behind the scenes here, it really determines the outcome far more than what people realize. Now, at KRG Hospitality, we have crafted a 500-point pre-opening checklist for bars and restaurants. And for hotels, that jumps up to 750 points. And that alone should tell you something about the magnitude of what it takes to launch a hospitality business the right way. This episode is going to focus on why pre-open leadership matters, why communication matters, why clarity matters more than ambition, and really why your support team is going to determine your future. So let's get started with this. There is really a dangerous illusion in this industry that opening a hospitality venue is simply about the idea, the vibe, the aesthetic, the recipes, and maybe even the music playlist. People fall in love with that surface level, but what they do not see are the hundreds of steps below that surface. There's the zoning and permits. And what about the contractor, scheduling and the equipment lead times and the vendor negotiations and the brand development that's needed? What about the operational, mapping and the financial modeling and the many other thoughts and strategies and all the different parties that are involved in bringing all of this together? People imagine that opening, but what they don't imagine is the months of project management that make that opening possible. It is kind of like that iceberg effect. The guests and even some hopeful operators, they just see that, 20%, but the seasoned operators and the consultants and the others part of the project deal with the other 80%. This is exactly why many first-time operators, they get completely blindsided. They underestimate the workload ahead. They underestimate the decisions that need to be made. They underestimate the cost of rework, and they underestimate the need for leadership. This is what, today's episode is all about: seeing the truth behind the build. Now, here's the thing. Every project has that moment where maybe something goes wrong, no matter how many times you have gone through the process. Something gets delayed. Something, maybe arrives damaged. Something costs way more than what was expected. Someone drops the ball somewhere. Someone miscommunicates. Someone, lacks in decision-making skills. This is normal. This is the industry. This is construction. This is business development. But what is not normal is having no leadership framework to respond to that. Leadership in project management is not about force. It is not about intensity. It's really about direction, and it is about setting expectations. It is about organizing the chaos so people can function. A great leader creates simplicity inside of that complexity. A great leader knows the difference between a preference and a priority. A great leader anticipates friction instead of reacting to it. A great leader protects momentum. Without leadership during development, the project is going to drift. And when it drifts, it costs time and money. And when money disappears, stress is going to increase. And when stress increases, decision quality starts to collapse. And then the project completely collapses as well, long before the doors open. This is why leadership is never optional during the pre-opening phase. It is the anchor that holds the entire system together. You have to remember that a hospitality business is not built by just one person. It is built by an entire support team. You need architects and engineers and designers and contractors and coaches and consultants. You need operators and your vendors and inspectors and advisors and lawyers and accountants. And they all must move in the same direction. Now, when one of them fails to communicate, it is going to affect everybody else. When one delays, it delays everybody else. When one misunderstands the concept, the entire project can lose its alignment. Your support team can elevate you, but it can also drain you. They can make opening feel like a controlled operation or this never-ending emergency. This is why building the right team early matters so much. You need people with experience and people with judgment and people with accountability. And most importantly, you need people with clarity. Hospitality development is not a place for ego. It is not a place for any kind of guesswork. It is not a place for passengers that are just along for the ride. Everyone on the team must know their lane and respect all of the others that are part of the process. Everyone must share the belief that the concept deserves the highest excellence. Everyone must be working towards the exact same future. Teamwork is not a fluff word here. It is the infrastructure needed to open successfully. It is the backbone to efficient communication. But communication should not depend on maybe someone's mood or memory or timing. Communication must be systemized. That's with, scheduled calls and shared documents and proper, project trackers and version controls and clear approval processes and clear ownership and clear deadlines. The number one killer of development projects is not incompetence. It is silence. And silence creates assumptions, and assumptions create errors. And then errors create rework, and then that rework, it creates delays. And then your delays, they create cost overruns and added time to the revenue generation stage that you need to get to. A project with poor communication becomes reactive. A project with structured communication becomes proactive. Great communication is not just constant noise, though. It is clarity delivered consistently. It's also about, decision making under pressure. Hundreds of decisions must be made long before the business even generates a single, dollar of revenue. The challenge is not, making decisions. The challenge is making decisions with intention. Now, here is what great decision making looks like in hospitality development. You decide, based on the concept. You decide based on the budget. You decide based on your market positioning. And arguably, and most importantly, you decide based on the guest experience. You do not decide based on emotion. You do not decide based on pressure tactics. You do not decide based on recommendations, maybe from a friend. You do not decide based on impulse, and you do not decide based on what the competitors in your market are doing. Great project management requires discipline. Decisions build the foundations of the entire business. You want to make quick decisions, but ensure that they're decisions made from clarity, not panic. How about, the non-people factors in all of this? Hospitality development is, again, too complex to be tracked just in someone's head. This is why you must use the appropriate tools. You must use technology. You must use checklists, and use shared dashboards. This is why we built our 500-point pre-opening checklist again for bars and restaurants, and the 700-point pre-opening checklist for hotels, because the operational complexity is significantly higher. These checklists, they exist to save operators from those blind spots. They exist to create structure where most operators, they rely on instinct. They exist to prevent the mistakes that we have seen hundreds of times out in the field. Tools do not replace leadership. What they do is they amplify it. But let me be, again, blunt here. AI, though, it's a very powerful tool. I use it, and there's a good chance that you use it as well. In the industry overall, it uses it. It can assist you. It can accelerate, and it can analyze, but it cannot lead a project. AI cannot walk a construction site. AI cannot negotiate really with a contractor. AI cannot inspect the equipment. AI cannot, coordinate with engineers. AI cannot, handle the emotion, the tension, and the nuance of human collaboration. AI, yeah, it can provide the information. It can provide real-time on-property judgment. Hospitality development requires context. It requires critical thinking. It requires intuition, and it requires experience. AI does not know the real world consequences of maybe a delayed permit or a wrong finish or a code violation or a missed deadline or a budget shortfall, right? AI tools can help you think, but they cannot take responsibility for those decisions. And responsibility is, again, a a real heart of leadership. So why does management matter so much? Because the pre-opening phase either sets you up for success or chaos. And if your project is chaotic, your opening is going to be chaotic as well. Your team will inherit that chaos. Your systems will reflect that chaos, and guest experience is going to reveal that chaos. If the project is structured, your opening is going to be structured. Your team will feel the clarity. Your systems will reflect that clarity, and your guest experience will radiate that clarity. Opening day is not just the beginning. It is the result. When you lead, development with discipline and communication and with intention, you end up reducing costs, you reduce delays, you reduce rework, and you reduce stress. You increase your alignment, you increase quality, you increase team trust, you increase operational efficiency, and you increase long-term profitability. This is the transformation. This is not about opening the fastest. It is about opening the strongest. The businesses that succeed in hospitality, they're not always the ones with the most capital. They are the ones with the most clarity. Project management in hospitality is really leadership in motion. It is that coordination and communication and that clarity repeated every single day. Again, it is not glamorous. It is definitely not easy, but it determines everything. It determines your systems. It determines your culture and your guest experience and your future profitability. Everything begins long before that first guest walks in that door. So if you are developing a hospitality concept or planning to open one soon, you need to remember this. Lead with clarity, build with intention, and communicate relentlessly. And then surround yourself with a support team that respects the responsibility of development. This is how you create hospitality businesses that win. This is how you move from chaos to clarity before you open. This is how you build something that truly lasts. Thank you for listening to Hospitality Reinvented. Until next time, stay bold, stay strategic, and let's keep reinventing hospitality together.